Hi, I'm here with David Kneeshaw, General Manager of Finance and Corporate Services at the Energy and Water Ombudsman of New South Wales, otherwise known as EWON. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Andrew.
Great to have you here. We're talking today a little bit around content management in Microsoft 365 and a project you guys embarked on that's, from my understanding, made a great difference to your organisation. But before we jump into that, let's just roll up and I guess talk about what was the business issue you were trying to solve? What were the key challenges you needed to address?
Yeah, sure. One of our strategic objectives is to try and get everything up into the cloud and into SaaS systems. So that was sort of an overarching objective, just to save on server costs, but also one of the key pain points from an individual perspective was having to VPN to get documents, which was a real pain in the backside. Another thing that we were trying to do was to get a bit more consistency across EWON. So we had documents all over the place in file servers. Through COVID, we had a lot of things spring up through different teams organically. There's some things on CRM, so there's stuff all over the place, and we're looking for a much more consolidated way of storing everything. Also, because everything was everywhere, we had different ways of doing things across EWON. Each team had a different way of attacking different storage and approval and things like that. So what we wanted to try and streamline some of those processes and take advantage of the collaboration or the integration between the teams and the document storage. And then from an organizational perspective, one of the other things was about how do we get tighter security on our document storage in terms of our permissions and things like that. And I guess the security wrapped around the whole of the platform, and then also trying to get some of the back-end governance of documents as well, so that it covers off some of those organisational risks.
Yeah, and I think that was really great timing for EWON relating to those sorts of things, particularly around that governance and compliance. We know in September there was just those upgrades to the Privacy Act, so puts you in good stead. But really great to hear that there was a broad spectrum of things that you were targeting there, and user experience and making things simple, making it easy to do the right thing for them, was always going to be a win. So when we think of those challenges, David, that you raised, were they ones that had been there for a while? What led to the decision to act when you did?
Yeah, so this project, as an intention, had been on the IT roadmap for a number of years, and for various reasons of prioritization and things that it had always got pushed off the list. But as you say, there's a lot of compliance reasons why we needed to get on with it, and also I guess some of those user pain points that you were talking about just really meant that we do want to really do something in this space. And so we had a bit of momentum, got a good proposal from PA, which made sense with iWorkplace, and we looked at a few other options, but that seemed to make sense. And we had a bit of a window before a big CRM implementation, so we jumped on it and got cracking into it.
Yeah, now it's great that you mentioned iWorkplace, but we didn't start there. We spoke about some of the things you could do with Microsoft 365 out of the box, some of the benefits that Purview would bring into the mix. And then we shared some of the aspects of what iWorkplace could do, including some of the automation elements to that. But what appealed to the organisation about the iWorkplace solution?
One of the key things is it's a Microsoft product, so it sits within the Microsoft environment. So you get all the benefits of the integration that sits around that, and also the security, which I talked about before. So our security consultants were very happy with that. The other thing that's great about that is in Microsoft, which we're all familiar with. We've also been using Teams for quite a long time, particularly through COVID. And so obviously the back end of Teams is SharePoint. So there was already a familiarity with Teams and SharePoint that we were able to build on. So that was a big tick. One of the other things we liked about iWorkplace was the ability to work in different ways and to access the documents in different ways. So through SharePoint or through Teams, or even sync down to the Windows Explorer for people who prefer working that way. So it's just another way of making it accessible to people who have different styles. We liked the fact that there was a lot of automation in iWorkplace, which meant that the users didn't need to do a lot of the work. It just happened in the background. So things like tagging documents, retention and disposal processes. And one of the other things was, the automatic setup of, registers and register items, or even to set up a new project and things. So a lot of that was automated and set up in the right way that was consistent with the rest of how the organisation's setup was. And I guess one of the final things I'd say is we did like the fact that we're not experts in this space, so we did want to partner with someone who was a subject matter expert in the area, and so that was why when we had the opportunity to work with Professional Advantage and the consultants who were deeply knowledgeable in this space, then we jumped on that as well, so that we could sort of go ahead with that guidance rather than trying to fumble our way through.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think it was a really good blend of a customer who in EWON there and the team there that really wanted to achieve something and make a difference, and that always makes the job easier, for the consultants working with a solution. And I think you mentioned some things there, the automation, retention and disposal that can be automated, and the auto provisioning and things like that really takes the pressure off IT in terms of a business like yourself that doesn't have endless budgets and can't just go and add headcounts in IT to make this sort of thing happen. And I think the ability to execute some of those things without necessarily needing an E5 license in Microsoft 2, stands iWorkplace out. So, if we talk about that, what do you think iWorkplace enabled, in the business?
I think one of the great things about doing the project was it forced us to step back and think about the whole of EWON as an organisation and how we wanted to do this, so to explicitly design what we wanted to build. And so it was a great opportunity to do that rather than incrementally changing what we were doing before. So it was quite a big shift, but it was great that we were able to explicitly do that. So I guess what it has led to is a much more intuitive view of EWON and the different areas of the organisation and the different needs of those areas. So some of the other things that's enabled is made things much easier to find because of some of that automatic tagging and things in the back end, or the more intuitive front end if you're looking for particular things. It's also helps with centralisation of some things that were scattered across the organisation. A couple of examples there were some of the registers. So we've created a policies and procedures register, for example, and a contracts register. So whichever area of the organisation you're in, you save them in that register and they're all in one place. So it's just helped with that centralisation. And some of the other things that it's helped with is things like the review and approval processes. So where people are working across different teams, they're much easier to do those things and to share documents and things, where once upon a time you might have been emailing things back and forth. So I think, and I guess one other final thing was just in terms of the collaboration, I think it's just enabled a lot of the different teams in EWON to work more closely together. So rather than having their little siloed areas, it's all in one place now. So it's much easier to collaborate across teams.
Yeah, fantastic, and of course that reduces risk, right? When we've got one place to file things and a common way that we do things. Would you say that iWorkplace has been fairly broad, or has it impacted one particular department or user type most?
It's had less of an impact on our dispute resolution team, who tend to work out of the CRM more. But for everyone else in the organisation, everyone's just using it every day. It's just a core part of what we do. And so, as I say, I think it's really helped that we're all in it together and we're all using the same system, which means that wherever you work, you can talk the same language with other people, and it's really easy to find things and work together on things. So, I think across the whole organisation, I'd say. The other thing I'd add to that as well, just again from a governance perspective, I think it's sort of the management team and the board. I think it's given the peace of mind just that things are well governed.
Yeah, definitely. Great to hear, David, that that broad impact is important. Of course, the reduction of risk is always going to be appealing to senior members in an organisation. Certainly takes pressure off them knowing that those sorts of governance controls are in place. It can be difficult, sitting down and calculating hours saved here, and what that relates into necessarily a real quantifiable benefit. But I'll ask the question: are there any quantifiable benefits that you can attribute to the project?
I think there's a lot of anecdotal savings, I guess. So savings in terms of just the ease of working on things and the turnaround time in terms of getting things reviewed and comments, and that collaboration that can happen real time rather than the back and forth that you get in the previous world. I guess a couple of the real savings is, because of the automation that you were mentioning before, you do actually save time in terms of the administration of the system going forward. But compared to where we were before, we're also making significant savings in that not having to manage and keep servers up to date, and also the cost of the data as well. So we've been able to move everything over into SharePoint, and we're just using our free allocation, if you like, of SharePoint. So it's actually costing us nothing anymore, where previously it cost us quite a lot of money to store the data and maintain those servers.
Well, always nice to have an offset towards your investment. So great to hear. Okay. Couple of last quick questions. How would you reflect on your overall experience with the project and deployment, and any learns that you picked up along the way?
Yeah, so I've said before that none of us are experts in this area, so that we intentionally partnered with PA just so that we would get some of that expertise to guide along the process. One of our observations is that SharePoint is a very powerful system or platform, and there's so many different things that can be done with it. So a lot of it right at the beginning, it was almost overwhelming a little bit, and it took us a little while to get our head into it and to see what the different options were and how we might want to set it up for EWON as well. So again, it was really great having PA available to and the consultants to lead us through that process. And just make sure we got the good outcome. I think probably in hindsight, I probably would have had one or two people go a little bit deeper into SharePoint just so that they could really have a solid understanding of how it worked in the back end and what was possible, and so almost becoming those experts, and maybe even having a role in the build of it as well. But overall, as I say, we did have our hand held all the way along and ended up with a good outcome.
And look, good outcomes, David, are relying upon having a good client who's committed and engaged in a project too. And I know our consultants were thoroughly impressed with the work done by the EWON team and the ownership and responsibility they took, and how quickly they adopted the solution. So congrats to the project team at EWON. Yeah. If your budgets were unlimited, and we know they're not, but if they were, what would you tackle next?
So when we went into this project, and it was partly from your advice as well, was that the implementation of this system was just the first step, but it was really needed to be kept alive and evolving over time, and that's certainly been our experience. So there's a lot of things that we are still working through about the best ways to get the most out of the system. So it's guidelines that about things like how we name documents and naming conventions. It's about some of those processes and protocols that we've gotten in using iWorkplace and working together. There's a few other features that we probably look at exploring as well. So guest management was something that we didn't have in the original scope, but just having a tighter control over who's got external access of iWorkplace. So that's something that we'll probably look at as well. But I know that a lot of the users as well, now that they're more familiar with SharePoint, and they understand some of the different options that are available, are having a rethink about how they might do some things, and they're redesigning some of their areas and some of the processes. And it's just, again, taking it to that next level of streamlining what we do and the benefit that we can get out of it. So it really is still an evolving solution. So we've got a really good baseline now, and everything from now is improvements from people who are now a lot more informed now and are asking to make some changes now to improve things. It's great.
Well, David, thank you for providing some of your time today and sharing the EWON story with iWorkplace. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we certainly wish you well from here, and we'll be staying closely connected and supporting you with what's required. So thanks again, Dave.
Thanks, Andrew. No problem.